Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Bible in a Year 2021. We are on day 199, and we are considering Isaiah chapters 23 through 27 today. Some very interesting prophecies that we have today. I'm going to start off with just a normal one, and this is considered Tyre, the nation of Tyre, and verses 8 and 9 of chapter 23. Who planned this concerning Tyre? The one who gives crowns, whose merchants were princes, whose traders were the honored of the earth. The Lord of heavenly forces planned it, to defile the pride of all beauty, to shame all the honored of the earth. So pride gets in way of the relationship, but yet we have this really encouraging thing here in verse 17 to 18, and we see Father's heart. This is the thing that we have to be reminded of all the time, the relationship, the Father's heart. At the end of 70 years, the Lord will visit Tyre. So 70 years coincides with the amount of time that Judah will spend in exile as well. So at the end of 70 years, the Lord will visit Tyre. She will return to her trade and will prostitute herself with all the kingdoms on the earth. Her profits and wages will be sacred to the Lord. They won't be stored or saved. Her profits will go to those living before the Lord for plentiful food and elegant clothes. So even though her trade is not going to be something that the Lord will favor, he is going to use those proceeds to help those who belong to him. In Isaiah 23, verses 2 to 3, it's just a declaration here that it doesn't matter who you are, nobody escapes what the Lord has planned here. And it will be the shame for the people and for the priest, for the slave and for his master, for the female servant and her mistress, for the buyer and for the seller, for the lender and for the borrower, for the creditor and for the debtor. The earth will be devastated, totally devastated. It will be destroyed, completely destroyed, because the Lord has said it would be so. And we know what he's like with his promises, whether it's the promise of the blessings or the curse. Isaiah 24, 5 to 6, it kind of reminds me of what John saw in Revelation. And of course, all revelation comes from the same source. So it shouldn't be surprising for us to see the correlations that are here. So the earth lies polluted under its inhabitants, for they have disobeyed instruction, swept aside law, and broken the ancient covenant. So polluted in relationship, but today we understand also polluted in environment. So therefore, a curse devours the earth. Its inhabitants suffer for their guilt. Therefore, the earth's inhabitants dwindle. Very few are left. And this is what John saw when he saw the plagues and the comet and the other disasters. We see the population being decreased by thirds. So this is what we're seeing. They dwindle. The inhabitants dwindle. Very few are left. And again, continuing with that in verses 21 to 23, on that day, the Lord will punish the forces of heaven in heaven and the kings of the earth on earth. They will be gathered together like prisoners in a pit, shut into a prison, punished after many days. The moon will be diminished and the sun will fade, since the Lord of heavenly forces will rule on Mount Zion and Jerusalem, glorious before his elders. So very similar things, the whole judgment that takes place, as well as the signs that we will see with the moon and the sun fading, and John tells us that at the end, for eternity, there will not be any sun, because the Lord himself will be that source. So, and then in verse 25, verses 3 to 4, we find this spontaneous rejoicing in Yahweh's goodness. It's just taking just a taste of it here. Therefore, strong people will glorify you. The towns of tyrant nations will fear you. You have been a refuge for the poor, a refuge for the needy in distress, a hiding place from the storm, a shade from the heat. And that's only a small sampling. It's best to read this whole thing just to get that flavor of the spontaneous worship that takes place and happens in us when we have that revelation of his goodness. And then in chapter 25, verses 6 to 7, we just get the picture of what the end looks like. So on this mountain, the Lord of heavenly forces will prepare for all peoples a rich feast, a feast of choice wines, of select foods rich in flavor, of choice wines well refined. He will swallow up on this mountain the veil that is veiling all peoples, the shroud enshrouding all nations. So that thing that separates us from him, that has been done through Jesus Christ. That veil has been torn. It's been removed. We have access to the Holy of Holies. We get to feast with him every day. We get to do it right now spiritually, but there will be a time when we get to do it face to face. And Isaiah is seeing that, and that is pretty amazing. And he describes it in a way that could be understood of the people of the time. We also see him in verse 8, he will swallow up death forever. The Lord will wipe tears from every face. He will remove his people's disgrace from off the whole earth, for the Lord has spoken. Yeah, that's what he's going to do. So then, as a result of all his goodness, as a result of all this, in this current situation and things that you're facing, there's this call to trust. It's going to get bad, but trust. Just trust that Yahweh is doing something in this. And that's pretty amazing when you consider what they're facing. So open the gates and let a righteous nation enter, a nation that keeps faith. Those who with sound thoughts, you will keep in peace. In peace because they trust in you. Trust in the Lord forever, for the Lord is a rock for all ages. So no matter what you're going through the good times, the bad times, in all ages, in all seasons, we trust him because he's good and he's the only thing that doesn't change and we can stand upon, and he's our rock. And here in verse 19, we see Isaiah seeing the resurrection. Your dead will live, their corpses will rise, and those who dwell in the dust will shout for joy. Your shadow is a shadow of light, but you will bring down the ghosts into the underworld. So that's pretty amazing stuff that Isaiah gets to see. Now, in more recent history for Isaiah, we see that the promise of restoration is given again, and it's given many times through all the prophets. In verses 12 to 13 of chapter 27, on that day, the Lord will beat grain from the channel of the Euphrates up to the valley of Egypt. You will be collected, Israelites, one by one. On that day, a great trumpet will be played. Those who were lost in the land of Assyria and those who were scattered in the land of Egypt will come. They will bow to the Lord at his holy mountain in Jerusalem. That had to be encouraging considering what they were facing. And we have to remember that he intends us to be encouraged by him, that he is our source of all things. And all we have to do is trust him. That's what he wants us to do, be in this relationship of trust. Okay, so we're going to end it there today. Just thanks for being part of this, and may the Lord bless you today, and may your eyes be open more and more to his presence and to his love, and that he's for you and not against you. And we will catch up with each other tomorrow. God bless.